Welcome back to Creating Your Life. This is episode 4, Imagination. Hi, this is Marc-Andre Alexander back for more of Creating Your Life. Today we're going to talk about imagination. Imagination is somewhat controversial and something that people have a hard time nailing down exactly what it is. If you think about it, everything starts in imagination. If you look around the world, in the room that you're in, look out the window, almost everything you see started in somebody's imagination. The chairs, the lamps, the couches, the walls, the floors, the carpet, the ceilings, the deck, the fences, even the way some of the vegetation is arranged, the trees and such were planted that way. Somebody had a vision. Somebody had a strong enough vision, something that drove them to actually manifest it in the world. It's more than just visual, though. It's a feeling kind of thing. People have passions that are stoked by the imagination. If you're composing music, obviously it's just not visual. It can also be, you can hear the music in your head. You can feel it. If you're a cook and you're inventing new things, you're stimulated by the smells and the textures of things. So all of the senses can come into play when you're talking about imagination. So that begs the question, what is it? A lot of people think it's just a byproduct of the mind, that the mind can picture things. And it's interesting because, if I look at something like a dog, I can close my eyes and I can see a dog. And if I think of a ball, bouncing along, I can visualize that ball bouncing along. And I can put them together. I can visualize a dog batting a ball around. So I can take pieces of the world that I see and I can imagine them and manipulate them in new ways and in new combinations. What's also extraordinary, though, is that a lot of stuff in the world, you have to ask yourself, how could somebody have imagined that? It's not like they took anything in the world to first create it. They had the kind of imagination that allowed them to put it together somehow. Often imagination takes what's been done and combines it in new ways, but there seem to be these few artists who kind of leap ahead and they're able to carve out new worlds because of the way they can imagine. And in a sense, this is the definition of a true artist. They're carving out new states of consciousness, new worlds, new things to experience that other people then can follow. So what is it? Is it just a byproduct of the mind? I don't think so. I think the imagination actually uses the mind for its purposes. In my world, the imagination is a faculty of soul, and soul is something different from the mind. As we get to the end of this series, you'll understand more of what I mean by soul. But let me just say now that soul is the fundamental identity, and it's a creative power, it's a creative force of who you are that is able to use the mind and the outer faculties to manifest in this world. And if you understand imagination as being this kind of higher creative element that uses tools to accomplish things, you'll have a closer idea of what I think the imagination is. Here's the thing, though. It's so creative and powerful that if you don't use it, other people will, because there are people who understand the creative power of the imagination, and so they will stoke people's imagination. If they can get 100 people following their vision can manifest much more strongly. Now, that could happen like in the semiconductor industry that I was in. There were people whose imagination was so powerful, they saw what was coming in with these new tools that can make silicon chips that could manifest these incredible computers and tablets and phones and everything that we're coming up with electronically. So they put a company together and they get a lot of people on board creating for the purpose of making these things possible. So companies, especially if they're very positive and forward-looking and growth-oriented, can take a lot of people and get them together and use that creative power to carve out new products. But it can also be used in other ways. People could take advantage of a group of people and inspire them with anger or hate and lead them into war. Imagination is a powerful, creative, and destructive tool. And it's important to understand how it functions in your life, how creation manifests in your life, so that you're in a better position to be in charge of your imagination. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, The Story of Success. And he has an entertaining notion in here, the idea that you put in 10,000 hours of work into a skill, and that can lead you into world-class expertise. He gives examples of Mozart, the Beatles, and Bill Gates. With Mozart started playing piano when he was around 3 or 4 years old, as well as the violin. He happened to have a father who was a musician and could take advantage of that, give him some training. And so by the time he was in his teens, he had already put in his 10,000 hours as a performer, a composer, a musician on more than one instrument, so that in his teens he was crafting compositions that adults couldn't even create at that level. He would astonish the world because of this incredible, powerful, singular focus and the fact that he put in the necessary time to become great. So he wasn't just a, quote, boy genius. It didn't just happen to him. He put in the time. Same with the Beatles, the 60s pop band. They didn't just burst on the stage fully formed. They spent months and years in clubs, in Europe especially, and Germany. They spent their 10,000 hours composing and performing numerous gigs, and they got to the point where they really were comfortable with what they were doing, so that when the time for success came, they could step up and deliver world-class performances and compositions. Bill Gates is another one who, as a young man, put in his 10,000 hours as a computer programmer. He got to know computers like nobody else at the time, and he put in the effort in such a way that he was able to almost bypass college and go off and found Microsoft without all the kind of necessary business experience. He had partners for that, but he had the coding, he had the understanding of software, and he was able to pioneer stuff that we're all living with today in profound ways. So this brings us to the point of view, especially if you're young, if you're still in your teens, or if you're in college. What are you passionate to create? Is there some singular thing that you really love? Is there a kind of life you want to lead that has a real focus to it? And is there something you're so passionate about that you're willing to put in the 10,000 hours? Something in the arts, something in the sciences, something as an engineer or in business. If you can have that singular focus and put in the 10,000 hours, that's where you start breaking into world-class achievement. That's one way of looking at it. There's also another way, and this is the idea of specialists versus generalists. Bill Gates, the Beatles, Mozart, they were specialists. They were something they were so passionate about that they spent their whole lives focused on it. Other people are interested in more than one thing, so they will spread out their focus. So is there several things that you'd be interested in putting maybe 1,000 to 2,000 hours in? I tend to be more of a generalist, so I have my 2,000 to 4,000 hours into being a piano player and a composer. I put some time into that. I'm also a published writer, so I've put in the number of hours to become published. I've been a teacher and a trainer, and I put in those hours. When I was active in Silicon Valley as a consultant, I would put in several thousand hours in various activities there that gave me a kind of expertise, maybe not into the point of being world class, but I was able to combine a number of things and do things that other people couldn't do because I had several passions that all connected together. And in a sense, that's how I'm able to create this series. The topics that you saw in episode 1 are topics that I'm fascinated with, that I spent time with and know well enough to combine them in interesting and new ways. Robert Heinlein, in the novel Time Enough for Love, said this: "A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. So here's the generalist view, that you don't specialize, you generalize. You're able to do a number of things well and expand your range and focus. So as you look at this series, as you think about creating your life, decide, are you more on the specialist side? Is there one single thing that you want to become world-class at? Or are you more of a generalist and you're wanting to go into several different things and combine them in new and perhaps creative ways? That's all for now. It's time for you to think about what you want to create and what is stopping you. Next time, we're going to go into the reticular activating system, and I promise this will be very, very fascinating.